Cincinnati wins the American Championship.
Here comes the quarterback, Burrow, looking for a block, and he got it up in the front by Hopkins into the end zone. Touchdown! What a skip!
As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
Welcome back. It is another episode of Pardon the Punctuation. I am Aaron Smith, joined as always by the best producer in the city, Ed Mayhall, and Jeffrey Howell. We also have a special guest with us this week in Justin Williams, who was our guest last week. In his absence this week, the Athletics sent one Chris Vannini to fill in for the Athletics' presence at the Cincinnati drubbing of the Central Florida Golden Knights. And they actually hate being called all of those things. So we're going to make sure we go out of our way to do that. But Chris, thank you for joining the show, sir.
Yeah, happy to fill the big shoes that Justin leaves behind from time to time.
I mean, this is kind of the second time that you've gotten to do that in about 3 days, so no big deal. But first and foremost, you were here and you were in Cincinnati, so we have to ask the pressing question. Skyline seemed to be an issue for you on Friday night as you were trying to find it. What was going on there, and how was it when you eventually found it, as we saw on your Twitter feed?
Yeah, so I get into town at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock Friday night, and I'm like, all right, I'm staying downtown, and so I'm thinking, hey, let's see. I got to try the famous Skyline Chili while I'm here. I'd never been in the city before, so I pull up the map, I pull up the locations around me, and they're all closed by like 5 or 6 o'clock. I was like, what? On a Friday night, these places are closed. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, I tweeted about it, tweeted my dismay over it, and a good many people told me, go to the one off of, I think, Ludlow by campus. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'll do that after the game on Saturday. And I did. And it was great. I loved it. I don't know what I got the basically the Coney dog. So I'm from Detroit, which is known for its Coney dogs. If you guys did not know that, American Coney Island, Lafayette Coney Island, there's a lot of those in Detroit. So I wanted to try essentially the Cincinnati version of it. It's very good, very good. Rave reviews all around. I was told that was the best location to go to anyway. So I think I got the right experience.
And then you followed that up with a little dessert.
Yes, I went over to Grader's for some ice cream, which was also recommended by a good number of people. I got some cookies and cream because I was pretty full. It's pretty full. And but I got some of that, and that was really good as well. So I feel like I got the full Cincinnati experience from a cuisine perspective after the game. So I think I did what I was supposed to do. The only one I didn't get to was Montgomery Inn and the ribs. That was the one I did not get to yet. So maybe if I go up next time, I will make sure to hit that place.
Fair enough. Some people probably said La Rosa's too. Maybe it's a pizza place that is local here. The sauce is pretty sweet. I don't know. Some people love it. Some people
also, I did also hit Taste of Belgium for breakfast before the game.
Well done.
Oh,
well done. That place is magical.
Yes, it was very good.
Did you get the chicken and waffle?
I just got the regular waffles.
Okay.
I just went the regular waffles, but it was very good. I got 2 of them. So
well done. All right. So getting into what actually happened and why you were here. Cincinnati played a game. They handily took care of a UCF team that was missing an awful lot of pieces, unfortunately, for Cincinnati's strength of schedule. But you got to experience Nippert in a noon atmosphere, which isn't necessarily our best atmosphere, but it was an electric crowd. It was a sold-out crowd. And to be completely honest, there were people who did tell me that it was the loudest they had heard a day game. So what was your experience like being there at Nippert Stadium?
Yeah, I had heard some people who are familiar with the stadium say that too, that it was a really loud environment for a noon game. And after after the first quarter, I think. No, maybe it was the third quarter. I don't know. After one of the quarters, I went walking around the concourse during the game. I try to do that when I travel to games just to kind of get a sense of just the atmosphere. Because when you're up in the press box, usually you have glass. Usually it's hard to hear what's going on out there. So I kind of want to just get a feel for what's really going on out there. And it's a cool stadium. Like it's obviously old and kind of packed in there, but that's among the steepest steps, in a stadium that I've ever kind of experienced. It was almost like going down a ladder, at some point. So, the fans are right there on top of you. They're goes up really, really quickly. And then that bridge or whatever behind one of the end zones, that's a real cool place to like watch a game from standing room only or something. Like it felt like the outfield of a baseball stadium, kind of. So that was kind of cool. And then I gotta say a low key thing I really loved, right behind the lower bowl seats on the concourse, there's like a 5-foot gap where you're not allowed to stand. You can stand behind it, and it creates that wall. It creates that pathway for people who want to move as opposed to people who want to stand. That was really convenient because when I made my trip around the concourse, I was like, this is actually pretty smooth to be able to do that. So that was cool. The overhang obviously makes it very loud, a lot louder than you would expect for 37,000 people. And I think the only concern, I didn't experience it, but just by looking, it seems like the bathroom situation is not ideal. I saw a number of just porta potties that were put up. You don't see that in a stadium very often. That's probably the only thing that stuck out from a negative perspective.
Okay. I'll take that. I feel like I'll take that synopsis as acceptable.
A lot of tweets in the bathrooms.
Always.
Yeah.
Then
I can see it.
You did get to stick around for the actual game, though. So what stood out to you? Was there any players that we're kind of used to hearing the Desmond Ridder Heisman talk at this point? Jerome Ford has kind of elevated himself after this last game as well. But were there any names that maybe stuck out to you as you broke it down the film, watched the game, all of that, that maybe some people who aren't the avid fans need to know?
Well, I mean, most people know, but Jerome Ford obviously stuck out in that game. He had 189 yards rushing, and
Right.
we've seen it from him before. But his ability to break away and get big runs for a big 220-pound back who feeds on physicality, that's a rare trait. And that was, probably the biggest question of the offense coming into the year was kind of replacing the running game. In the last couple of games, really, you've seen it from Jerome Ford. And, if you don't need to put so much on Desmond Ridder running and passing the ball, that makes a world of difference. And Luke Fickell made the point after the game where they haven't had to give him like 30 carries in a game yet. So he's pretty fresh, all things considered. And if it gets down to a point where they need to do that, they feel like they can. But he has really stood out these last couple of weeks as a guy who really changes, I think, the dynamic of that offense.
Say the top speed numbers that he's been able to generate the last 2 weeks put him somewhere in the top 3 for the last couple of years in the NFL even.
Oh wow!
I know there was a lot made of Derrick Henry hitting 21.8 miles an hour last night, and I believe Jerome Ford hit 22.51 this weekend and 22.75 last weekend. So you've got that high end speed going with the ability to move people out of the way at will.
You can see why Alabama liked him, at some point. Derrick Henry, Jerome Ford. It turns out Alabama's pretty good at identifying running backs.
Crazy. Who would have thought? So what about on the other side of the ball? What were your takeaways in the game on the other side of the ball, outside of Sauce Gardner, who everybody knows and was named to your the Athletics mid-season All-American team?
It was a difficult evaluation in the sense that UCF's offense is just kind of kept together by paper clips right now. I mean, Mikey Keene doing what he can, but when you're down your best couple of running backs, when you're down, Jalen Robinson, your best receiver, there's just not a lot of options to go to compared to what this team has had, not to mention all the guys they lost from last year's team. So they were completely overwhelmed. And, you know, Cincinnati's defense has not racked up a lot of negative plays this year. They've largely been just solid and you don't give up big plays. But they were forcing Keene to run around a lot. And that's with obviously a 3-man front and kind of some a different type of defense than you typically see in the American. So they were able to get a lot of stops, negative plays. I don't remember what the final number was, but really get the quarterback running around in a way that, you know, with that kind of defense is not something we've maybe seen a ton of. And it was a pretty impressive performance. Obviously, you give up 21 points, but most of that was garbage time outside of one, I think late in the first half or something like that. It was after a big play. So, but yeah, I mean, defense is obviously as advertised.
So you wrote in for The Athletic, you brought out your weekly ranking update, and you have Cincinnati in there at 2. We know that the CFP committee is going to get together and drop their rankings on November 2nd. We're all kind of nervous, even sitting at number 2, that Cincinnati is going to be left out. So what do you feel like Cincinnati has to do, or maybe some of the dominoes that have to fall for Cincinnati to get into the college football playoff this year?
Well, when the first rankings come out, the top group of 5 team is typically a couple spots lower than they are in the polls, but we've never had a team number 2 in the polls. So we'll see. I mean, if I had to guess right now, I could see the committee putting them at number 4 or something like that. But, you know, you're going to have to keep putting up numbers like you did the last 2 games. I mean, 50 points in 2 straight games for the first time ever. I mean that's a pretty remarkable stat on its own, and that's the kind of performance Cincinnati is going to keep putting on, just to not leave not leave doubt, not have a slip up where you win a game by 7 points and it's kind of a lesser opponent, and then there's the excuse to move you down. I mean, we saw it last year when they moved down behind like 2 and 3 loss teams just because they didn't even play, and it was like it was pretty ridiculous. So, you know, it obviously going to have to hope SMU keeps winning. I mean, if SMU is the top 15 team by the time they come down, that's good. Hope Notre Dame keeps winning. You know, that they may end up being a 10-2 team. That's important. And then probably Houston as well, if you're going to play Houston in the championship game. So those 3 teams are going to need to keep winning. So those wins or future wins obviously have some more value.
Do you think there's a chance that a 2-loss team could end up jumping Cincinnati before season's end? Whether that be Alabama or even a Big Ten team?
It's hard to say because those Big Ten teams, unless it's Ohio State, but Michigan State, if they're going to have 2 losses, they're going to be 2 losses in November, essentially. It's not like there's going to be one early loss, they make up for it, then you stumble a bit, and then you have time to make it up. It's going to be 2 losses potentially for Michigan State, or if Ohio State has 1 slip up, there's not going to be as much time to make up ground as opposed to it being an early season loss. Now, Ohio State kind of has that. Alabama's just kind of in the middle. You know, what makes this different really is the Notre Dame win. If Notre Dame stays in that top 15 range, then that's a huge deal. Like a really, really big deal. UCF never had that. Cincinnati last year didn't have that. You know, Western Michigan didn't have that. You know, that's the thing that has to be the game changer here. So, is it possible? Like I said, we saw 2 and 3 loss teams go out of heaven last year, so anything's possible. But I would like to think that it's not enough time to kind of make up for it.
Now, Joey Galloway came out today and said that Notre Dame's schedule isn't as good as we thought it was because they've already lost. And when he was talking about Cincinnati and the win that Cincinnati has over Notre Dame, he referenced that Notre Dame's schedule isn't as tough because they lost. So how does that make sense in this whole grand scheme of things? As you're looking at, well, of course they lost to Cincinnati. That makes their schedule weaker because they lost to Cincinnati. Help me make that make sense.
I mean, look, Notre Dame has not played great this year. They almost lost to Toledo. They almost lost to Florida State. They're not on the same level they have been. I actually don't think I have them in my top 20. I think they're in that. They might be in the top 20 now. But in the polls, they're higher up. So it really depends on where the committee puts Notre Dame, which we don't know either. That's kind of the same situation where you don't totally know how the committee is going to pick certain certain teams, but the idea that they have a loss and therefore they're not as good when that loss was to that one team, it's obviously ridiculous. There are ways to criticize Notre Dame. That is not it.
I feel like those same arguments could be made for anyone arguing Ohio State as well, as they
Sure.
haven't played a team inside that top 40 outside of Oregon, and they dropped the ball there at home. So, you were at the game though, and there was one play that stood out to me that did involve Sauce Gardner, and this kind of gets to the Twitter stuff that I wanted to bring up here. But Sauce Gardner executed, and I asked Brady Collins this last night when we had him on our podcast, strength coach for the Bearcats. But Sauce Gardner executed what looked like a perfect form rock bottom on the field. And how good do you think that was? And how difficult do you think it was for him not to turn around and then drop a people's elbow, as usually goes after a rock bottom?
I hate to say this. I don't think I saw the play. And I can't believe I didn't see the play. I must have just not been looking at this certain time. We have seen rock bottoms in football before. Sometimes they've been penalized. So I mean, what do you guys think of the form? I didn't see it. What did you think of the form?
It was beautifully done. I mean, the kid had no chance, and Sauce lifted him off his feet and dropped him square on his back. It was, I mean,
I can't believe I missed this. I'm going to have to. If you guys have a clip somewhere, send that to me. I definitely need to see this.
We'll make sure that makes it your way.
I was say Ed can take care of tagging you in that.
I have a clip of it somewhere. Let's see if I can pull it up.
But
yeah, no. And I assume he wasn't penalized for
no, there
it,
was
right?
no. When you execute it that well, you can't be penalized.
I mean, sometimes if it's a German suplex, sometimes if it's a belly-to-belly suplex, they'll penalize it. But I'm glad that they didn't, though. That's how it should be.
He did catch him, and then just kind of. I mean, it was just fantastic.
Was it kind of like that photo? There's that photo of, I think it was one of the the Ohio State assistants grabbing a fan who was going to run on the field the one time. You see that photo? It sounds like what you're describing is kind of like that.
Yeah, I remember that. That was from like 5 or 6 years ago, like that. Yeah, maybe longer. Yeah.
We'll make sure you get that clip, and you just hit us on Twitter after you've watched it with your assessment of said play. But you are into wrestling, and Ed's been just kind of chomping at the bit to talk wrestling on this podcast for him. So, Ed, the floor is yours here as we have Chris Vannini.
Yeah, Chris, in your opinion, who was the greatest wrestler of all time, and why is it Stone Cold Steve Austin?
It's Stone Cold Steve Austin because no wrestler has ever connected with fans, with the common fan, more than him. And it wasn't a long run. You're talking 96 to 02, 03, but the common man drinking beer who wants to beat up his corporate boss, like that's the most brilliant, obvious storyline in the history of wrestling, the history of storytelling. And right. You couple the middle fingers, the beer, the stuff that you didn't really see elsewhere. It's like, oh, I know people who are like this. I know people who would like to do this. I would like to do this sometime. Everybody just lived vicariously through him. And nobody got a bigger pop from the crowd than Austin coming out. Nothing matches. I know there's the Road Warrior pop, and I get it. It really should be the Stone Cold pop because nothing matches that excitement, that intensity of, something's about to go down when you hear that glass break, and it's going to deliver every single time.
Yeah, so it ranks right up there next to the bell toll for The Undertaker, but I think you're right. The pop came bigger for Austin than it did The Undertaker.
Go look at WrestleMania 30 when you had The Rock, Hulk Hogan, and Austin, all three of them come out. The biggest pop was for Austin. Like, that tells you right there, that's three of the greatest ever. And it's just, it hits different when that glass breaks. It's just another level when it's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Now, to settle apart in the punctuation inner debate, is AEW real wrestling? Are you paying attention to AEW, or is it just still WWE for you?
No, I watch both. I mean, I do a wrestling podcast, Getting Over, with Adam Silverstein from CBS. Him and I do a weekly wrestling podcast. I watch both of them. I don't catch it all the time. I missed AEW this weekend because I was traveling to Cincinnati and because of Saturday college football, so I didn't see it. But no, I watched both of them, and I like both of them. I don't really like the kind of the growing stan culture between the two, where everybody has to like one and hate the other and whatever. It's like, man, there's just more good wrestling, and if they're gonna motivate each other to try to one up each other, then wrestling fans are the ultimate winners.
Could it become similar to the WWF WCW days?
No, because they're on different nights. Like
that's the thing. Yeah.
The WWF WCW Raw Monday night. It was great.
Yeah, WWF and WCW went head to head on Monday nights, same time slots every time, and that doesn't happen now because why would you do that? You're kind of, it's not, honestly not smart business, but in the end, that really, you look at the wrestling numbers, you were getting 10 million people watching wrestling. You were outrating Monday Night Football back then in the 1990s, late 90s. Now the numbers have really gone down, but numbers for everything except football have gone down. But WWE's on Monday and Friday, AEW's on Wednesday and later Friday. So they never really go head to head. They kind of did this last Friday a little bit, but now you can watch it all. Like, you used to have to pick one before. Now you don't have to.
So, I also do enjoy that WWE added Pat McAfee to the Friday night broadcast. I think the guy is hilarious. Plus, when he was, actually wrestling last year, that was pretty funny. But that did bring me. I think that's what brought me back to wrestling because I was gone for a little while.
Oh, really? Yeah, he is a talented broadcaster, man. I mean, you talk about someone who just kind of connects with regular people, like that's him. And the number one thing I want from any commentator, whether it's regular sports or anything or wrestling or whatever, whoever's doing the play-by-play, who's ever doing the color commentary, I want to feel like they enjoy what they're doing. That's why we love Tony Romo on CBS, because the dude's just having a ball out there. And you can feel it. Because as I'm having fun watching a game, I like to know that the person whose job it is to talk about this is having just as much fun as I am. And Pat McAfee is exactly that. The enthusiasm, it's infectious. And him and Cole, I think, are the best wrestling commentators going anywhere right now, the two of them. The fact that it is two of them and not three helps, but they are a really good pair. And McAfee has been super fun. That's interesting that he got you back into wrestling. I hadn't heard that before.
After the Attitude Era, I just kind of faded out.
Yeah, so did I. I got back in like 2012, 2013, like CM Punk versus Rock type stuff, but I was out for a good decade.
I'm a big CM Punk fan now with the AEW.
Yeah, it's great seeing him back. I mean, without a doubt. I want to see him a bit more. I want to see him with an edge. He's been back and he's just been kind of happy to be here, happy to work with the young guys, happy to do this. Like which is fine, but Dan O'Brien comes in and immediately he's like, I want to kick somebody's ass. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see CM Punk with an edge.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Ed, I think you got your wrestling talk in. So back to Cincinnati, though. Are we going to see you back in the Queen City here before season's end?
If SMU keeps winning, yes.
All right.
Or potentially for the championship game. I'm not sure. Kind of depends on what's up, but I'm really hoping Cincinnati and SMU win out, and we've got like some top 15 matchup, and Justin and I can be together in the same place at the same time to cover a game like that. So hope so.
That'd be awesome.
Well, we do thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday night for us to talk a little bit of Bearcats football, and surprise, we talked a little bit of wrestling with you too. So, but that was Chris Vannini of The Athletic, and your Twitter handle, I don't have it memorized. I do apologize, but if people want to follow,
just at Chris Vannini, just at Chris Vannini, my name. You can figure it out.
Two ends in the middle, like Cincinnati. Good luck.
There you go.
He was Chris Vannini, but again, thank you for taking time out of your night, sir. We appreciate it.
No problem, guys. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Councilman Barnett has to be happy. Finally.
Oh, we're not done. I have notes for Friday night.
Ed, maybe later.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
we got time for.
I couldn't let him down. I'm also glad that he agreed that Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest wrestler of all time, because some people might say The Undertaker, some people might say The Rock, some people might say Shawn Michaels. You never know.
I'm just glad that he seemed to thoroughly enjoy Nippert Stadium.
Yeah.
And if
absolutely.
If your only argument is the bathrooms, and that's something that they did address when we did expand, and you're worried about porta potties, I mean, I'm not going to go sit down in a porta potty, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I mean, I think that Cincinnati did address that, and there are bathrooms scattered about if you know what you're looking for. So I don't know if that's your only knock. I mean, I've been to like Michigan Stadium, and they have porta potties lining like the whole outside, which should surprise nobody.
Yep.
Michigan has porta potties everywhere.
I will take that as a positive review on Nippert Stadium.
Yes.
So, I wonder, you know, during the Miami game, you guys were talking about how it's like it was like the loudest some people had ever heard it, and during the Miami game, you know, they recorded the highest decibel rating. I believe it was during the first touchdown pass of the game that had been there. So I'd be kind of curious to like, like for like extended periods, because it seemed like, I mean, the students were there early this weekend. They were there early. I saw clips all over Twitter. You know, everybody was like, you know, UC's ready, the fan base is ready. You know, all the students are here already. So I'd be kind of interested to know like
I can tell you the
average.
I can tell you the exact moment where it got loudest was when they ended up. UCF had to call timeout on two different occasions, and you had players on the field, and I don't recall which players. I want to say it was like DeBlanco and maybe Maije, but you had players on the field who were kind of doing like the get up, let's go, get loud type, you know, arm waves on the field, and it was like they were already loud. And even again, to Chris's point, when you're in the press box, you're behind double pane glass, so you can't really hear a whole lot, but you could hear like it was already loud, and then you heard it actually go like louder. Like it was absolutely insane to hear it go from like, we're loud, it's third down, we need to get them out of their rhythm, we need to get this stop, and then they're like, oh, the players want us to be louder, I'm not going to have a voice on Monday, let's go. And it was really, really cool to even hear through the press box glass.
Yeah, I could hear it on the TV. I was still disappointed in ABC's cameras for the game, as they seem to, for the majority of the game, to be like overexposed. And I know that's like kind of a whiny little gripe, and like, you know, take your happy butt down to the stadium.
For the layman, what does that mean? For the layman, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
It means that it was very bright, like it was like washed out. If that's a better term for you, like everyone to understand. Like the picture was very washed out for most of the game. It seemed like I was watching, you know, a Conference USA game on ESPN 8 the Ocho, not an ABC game. Because later on in the day, you know, other games that I turned on looked a lot nicer. For like, you know, it's like they sent their old school cameras there. What you got, Ed?
Back on the old dial TVs, right? We had the bright, the contrast. You're saying the bright was like all the way up, and the contrast was like pretty much down.
Yeah, there you go, Ed. Thanks.
Does that help, Aaron?
Yep. That should help for everybody. So that was a little bit of a knock, because I was like, man, I want to watch my guys. You know, it happens, I guess. Maybe they'll send the HD cameras next time. I don't know.
Hashtag first world problems.
Right, exactly.
My HD wasn't clear enough. I wanted it in 4K, and I only got it in HD.
There's not a lot of 4K. There's not a lot of 4K broadcasting going on right now, but
it's not Ultra HD, UHD.
I don't know that anything's in UHD except for DVDs and Blu-rays.
But back to the game. You brought up the hit by Sauce.
Mm-hmm. You gonna raise me Brian Cook's hit?
You would think that I would.
Because let's talk about that for a minute before we.
Let me talk about what happened that caused that to happen. There is one man in the middle of the defensive line
that blew up the center.
That made it look Oh, is it? Okay, so now you're going to play the sauce hit when I'm talking about something else? It's so pretty.
I mean, he just lifts him up with that whole shoulder. And bam.
I think what makes that even better is if you watch his feet appear to be kicking rapidly in the air, like when some large man picks up a little, like when like he's trying to get away, and Sauce is like, you guys won't throw at me. I don't get a play. Like, let me just end your day. There you go.
It's so good. Those of you who are listening only, we did play the clip on repeat there for a little while, and you can see the running back's legs kicking in the field as Sauce Gardner does indeed rock bottom him. Ed, make sure you send that clip to Chris Vannini so you can
already tag him in it.
Nice. Well done. Best producer in the city.
When I was watching the game, and of course, like, you know, it immediately, like, it gets overshadowed by the fact that Brian Cook absolutely blew that play up on the outside, right?
Oh, because that was the big explosive sexy hit on that play.
But what gets little credit, and I've seen maybe a couple people kind of like gloss over it on Twitter here and there,
about it,
is Brooks just blasts his way. I thought my feeling was that it was that there was a whistle that I didn't hear, and their center just didn't move, right? But really what happened was Brooks put his paws in this guy's chest, and he had no other recourse but to be launched backwards into the backfield, and it screwed everything up. I mean,
1,000%.
Mikey Keene had to roll one way, then try and roll back, and then he hung his I don't even know if that was his run. I guess it was probably his running back that he hung out to dry over there, and he got lit up. So,
well, I think Malik Vann was back in the backfield as well because of the way that, I don't know if the center was supposed to pull and try and help out with Van on that play or what.
Something was very wrong for their offensive line on that, and it was because our defensive line blew them like 3 feet off the ball.
And that just kind of goes back to say, you know, one of the arguments on the Cincinnati team is people are like, oh, they're going to get blown out by anybody that they play. This team doesn't belong, et cetera, et cetera. We're starting to see more and more people who are analysts or talking heads for ESPN, for different outlets, talk more and more about how there's so much NFL ready talent on this team. And of course, that's what's going to happen when you're returning a bunch of guys who are in their 5th and 6th years. And I do understand when you have redshirt, when you have COVID, when you have, you know, these different things that have allowed these guys to play this many years, that's of course, you know, the exception, not the rule. This isn't things that we're accustomed to with all these players getting an extra year because of the year of COVID. And while that's unfortunate for guys that weren't able to do that, Cincinnati's clearly taking full advantage of the fact that they were able to do that. And so you have these guys, there's people mentioning anywhere between 7 or 8 as your floor of guys that are draft ready to somewhere between 10, 12. And that's absolutely insane for a team that's not accustomed to having guys drafted over the course of the longevity of the program. Of course, there's been guys over the course of the last couple of years that have been drafted, but not anywhere near this number. I mean, I think Alabama only had 11 guys drafted just last year. And so for Cincinnati to be mentioned with those kind of numbers, that's a big deal.
It absolutely is a big deal, and it speaks to the elite level of development that is going on in Clifton. Because I had a discussion, and I'll classify it as a discussion with an individual who's an Ohio State fan.
Never engage. I keep trying to tell you.
This is not the. This is a guy that this is a guy I went to college with.
Oh, that's fair.
Jeff, you gotta live by my rules. My rules is when you see it, you just keep scrolling. You just gotta keep scrolling.
I'm gonna mute you, Ed. I'm gonna mute you right now.
With a UCF fan on Twitter.
No.
Please
so I had a conversation with a buddy I went to college with he's an Ohio State fan. And he wanted to basically hit all the bad national talking points that go around about UC not having the ability to play with anybody, that, they won't be around at the end of the year anyway. It doesn't matter.
Thanks
we don't
for
need to
clipping
discuss.
my rant last week. It was a good rant. Should have been clipped. Should have been on the Twitter sphere.
I don't know how to use your phone.
I'm not the producer.
Oh, okay. All right.
True. Aaron wins. Point Aaron. But back to my conversation that I had, we're going back and forth, and so I brought up the Georgia game from January of this year with essentially all the same kids and all the same kids from Georgia, minus, both teams did in fact have some people missing. And the argument I was given was Georgia was missing 5-star players. UC was only missing some 3- and 4-star players.
I saw that same argument
and I said,
on Twitter today.
What?
I hate that argument.
And guess what? It was a close game that UC dominated for all up until a field goal put Georgia ahead. So you're saying that those 3-star kids that came into UC and have been developed into
NFL ready guys that were drafted,
ready and essentially 5-star kids. So your argument is stupid. And he was like, there were other that's 5-star kids and they're backing them up with like 4-star kids. And I was like, so what do you think UC's backing their 3-star kids? It's the stupidest thing ever.
Right.
So
Luke Fickell has put that to rest. Like, who cares? He brings in the guys he needs, and he's developed them very well. You've got Mike Warren, James Hudson. They're the first 2 underclassmen to leave UC to go to the NFL. You've got a score of other kids. Right. You've got a score of other kids that could have gone to the NFL or at least entered the draft and probably would have been drafted, maybe caught on somewhere. Instead, they came back, and guess what? They're NFL ready now.
Well, case in point, last year, and we talked about this last night on the BVP, but you had James Wiggins, All-American James Wiggins, out. And in his place came, we've already talked about him tonight, Brian Cook, who ended up being arguably the best defensive player in the Georgia game.
Oh, absolutely.
And he had seen very little time on the field to that point by comparison. It's absolutely asinine. And you can't, honestly, I keep trying to tell you, you can't actually engage with people who on Twitter because nobody actually wants to have a conversation. They just want to tell you how they're right, why they're right, and why they won't change their mind.
Well,
and it's not just sports; it's anything.
You're right. So the other point I want to bring up here in regards to this is during Luke's presser today. I think it was today. Okay. Dad's ready to rant.
Here we go.
Luke, before he gets in here and probably steals my thunder, but
hurry up! I'm still
Luke
working
said
on it.
there was a question asked to Luke today about, I believe it was in reference to Prater. It's hard to hear the reporters asking the questions on those pressers, but I believe it was in regards to Prater being a 4-star waiting in the wings. And Luke said, well, first off, we're not going to say waiting in the wings because if you're waiting in the wings, someone will pass you up, which speaks to the fact that Brian Cook was able to come into a game like the Georgia game and play the way that he did at the level he did because he wasn't waiting in the wings for his shot to get in. He was developing during the Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays.
God, he's a word master, that Fickell.
He is. It is. It's so much fun to listen to him. I wish, and maybe when Chad gets in here, I can tell Chad and he can pass along that it would be nice if they would turn the volume up on the reporters somehow, so that we could hear the questions that are being asked during these press conferences that they post up to YouTube.
They don't have a speaker in there.
Oh, they don't?
No, it's the only when you see the mics, those are directly plugged into the cameras for the news channels back in the back.
Oh,
and that's all that those are connected to. They're not like
TV.
Well, maybe they could get them some speakers back there because it's just hard to you can hear some of the guys that are talking. I
hear Jerome Ford, and I was in the first or second. I was in the first row, and I couldn't hear Jerome Ford on that presser, which was crazy.
Let me give you guys a stat that I saw on PFF today. Sauce has only allowed 0.22 yards per coverage snap. That's the third lowest in college football. Like, that's ridiculous. And then UCF, their whole game was we need to throw at Sauce.
Well, that was somebody that came out. That was one of those UCF, like,
I know, but
this
still,
is
like,
their shot. This is their shot at winning. If
you're going to make that statement on the Twitter, then maybe you do a little bit of research.
He also has
Sauce. Well, I mean, they gave him his props. They said, like, yes, he's very good, but there's got to be a way to attack him, and they need to try to exploit it if they want to win.
He's also allowed an FBS low 44.2 pass efficiency rating when targeted this season, and quarterbacks are 8 for 18 with 47 yards and no touchdowns with his 2 interceptions.
Hi, Chad.
So,
hi, boys.
Hey.
How's my audio? It seemed low on the test. Am I all right?
It is low, but I don't know if Ed can fix.
It's better than Aaron's. You're fine.
Whack.
I've been ready to rant for a while now, for like 5 hours today. After hearing what
left the house?
After hearing what Joey Galloway had to say.
Yeah.
Have you left the house since Friday?
I don't have great audio with Aaron, I don't think, right now.
Yeah, he asked if you've left the house since Friday.
I was allowed to leave the house today. I went to practice today.
Okay.
That was nice. I'm allowed to go outside. I'm not allowed to go anywhere inside, so I wasn't allowed to be at the press conference. Because the press conference is in the team room of the Linder Center, so I wasn't allowed to do that. But I was allowed to go to practice. You want me to drop some news on the podcast?
Yeah,
have at
All
it.
for that.
Darian Beavers, almost a full participant in practice today. He was limited a touch, but if this was like an NFL practice, he is on track to participate on Saturday. So for anybody worrying about Darian Beavers, I would not worry about Darian Beavers. As Brady told us essentially last night on the BBP, that was a chance to get Jaheim Thomas a lot of meaningful reps.
Kicked ass.
In that game, and he was third on the team with 7 tackles. So that was one of those opportunities where you're up 35-0 or whatever, 28-0, 35-0, whenever Beavers went out. That's an opportunity to get a guy like Jaheim Thomas on the field and prepare for the future. And, potentially with Jaheim Thomas, Wilson Huber, and Deshaun Pace, you got to see like maybe what the linebacker core looks like next year. Because fortunately for Cincinnati fans, all this talk about NFL draft eligible guys, Deshaun Pace isn't eligible to participate in the NFL draft this year, fortunately. Because you talk about people blowing up their draft stock on this Cincinnati team. Deshaun Pace is absolutely one of them. And Thursday night on the BBP, or on the BCJ pod, I got so many pods now, it's hard to keep separate. On the BCJ pod, Jim Nagy, the director of the Senior Bowl, is going to join us for 20 minutes to talk about the 10 Bearcats right now that are draftable and on NFL radars going into the 2022 draft. You want me to give you names? I'll give you names.
Yeah.
Desmond Ridder,
Well,
Jerome Ford, Josh Wiley, Lenny Taylor, Alec Pierce. Offense, that's 5. Defense, Myjai Sanders, Darian Beavers, Ahmad Gardner. Who am I forgetting on defense?
Kobe
Bryant, and Brian Cook.
nice.
Also 5. Go back and look at how many teams had 10 players drafted in recent NFL drafts. And guess what? Those teams were the elite teams. This is an elite team.
Yeah.
And right now, the media is scrambling because it doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't make sense that this Cincinnati team has elite talent. They don't get it. They don't want to understand it. And a guy like Joey Galloway, what's Joey Galloway trying to protect? Ohio State's spot in the college football playoff.
Yep.
trying to protect ESPN, who has money invested in the SEC and money invested in, not the AAC, not to that level.
They've got pennies on the dollar invested in the AAC. They've got a great return on investment in the AAC because they make a lot more than they spend, but they don't have $30-40 million a year each team invested in the American Athletic Conference. And here's the difference, man. Go back and look. Like, everybody wants to talk about, our friends from Middle Florida University. Go back and look at how many guys that team had drafted. It wasn't a lot. Like, all the elite guys from those teams, they're not going to spend.
Florida State.
They're holding a clipboard for Florida State.
Yeah.
The playing is a loose interpretation of what they're doing at Florida State right now.
Oof.
Those aren't teams that had a boatload of NFL talent. This Cincinnati team has a ton of NFL talent. And if you're going to tell me that they don't, I'm going to tell you Jim Nagy knows fucking more than you do. He's won Super Bowls. He's been an NFL scout for like a decade and a half, and now he's the guy in charge of the players that get invited to the Senior Bowl.
See, but that's the thing. You can't tell anybody anything logically right now because Ohio State fans will not argue logic. They're still talking about a game that happened 2 years ago.
Alabama fans have chimed in. Like, they're hot and bothered about this Cincinnati thing.
Because we're taking their spot. Right now, we're taking their spot.
Somebody's spot is in danger.
And they all have
Cincinnati
to scramble to come up with a reason why the Cincinnati Bearcats are stealing a spot because they don't deserve to be there because they can't hang with the big dogs. And you point back to January. Let me tell you, January was this year, and those teams are essentially the same. They hung with them. Not only did they hang with them, they dominated them up until they lost on
3.5 quarters. 3.5 quarters.
Yep.
Yeah.
They played with the big boys.
But let's get to what Joey Galloway said today, which is one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever heard anybody say on the on TV in my entire life. He didn't say it on the internet. He said it on ESPN. Cincinnati's win over Notre Dame is devalued because Notre Dame has a loss.
One.
Wonder who that loss could be from.
One loss.
Somebody said it in my mentions today. I'm waiting for somebody to say Notre Dame deserves a spot over Cincinnati because Notre Dame played a P5 schedule and their only loss was to a college football playoff contender. It's coming.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
That argument's coming.
For sure.
If we get 4 weeks from now and Notre Dame still only has one loss, it's coming. Mm-hmm. It's coming. Notre Dame tested themselves more than Cincinnati did. I don't care that Cincinnati went in. And if somebody posted, like, there's these sites now that post like win predictabilities.
Yeah.
Which are essentially like if you look at yards per play and splash plays and turnovers and all of the things that happen in a game, what were the chances that each team would have won or would have lost if you run it through a simulator with all of those data points included in the game? Cincinnati's chances of winning that Notre Dame game, 100%.
Well, I'm waiting for they're not the same team that Cincinnati played because they changed their quarterback or some bullshit.
They didn't change their quarterback. Their quarterback's the same.
3 quarterbacks.
I'm waiting for that to be the argument in a couple of
weeks. It's already happening with Oklahoma. Oklahoma deserves in because they changed their quarterback.
He's apparently a Heisman candidate, according to Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And then the fact that Oklahoma played Tulane.
Yeah.
You got to beat
the dog shit out of Tulane right now.
And Oklahoma only won by a touchdown.
At home.
5 points.
At home. 5 points. So 30, they gave up
35 Aaron, that
points.
Wasn't at home. They painted the Tulane logo on the field.
Don't give me that. It was a home game. It was in their stadium. That's a home game.
So they gave up 35 points. Tell me how many of those. I mean, I didn't watch that game, so I don't know. But how many of those points would have been prevented
by Caleb Williams? All of them.
Spencer Rattler wasn't the quarterback then.
All Caleb Williams would have the momentum, the energy from having Caleb Williams at quarterback would have made all the difference for
because at that point in time, Spencer Rattler was still a
Heisman candidate.
Heisman candidate, right?
The Heisman front runner.
There was no momentum and energy from having that guy. No, none. All right, let's put a freshman in. I mean, I get it. Caleb Williams is better than Spencer Rattler right now, but then was he? No, or else Caleb Williams would have been starting that game.
How does Oklahoma have people in the conversation for All-American defensive players?
That's a great question too. Their defense sucks.
I haven't seen any defense in the Big 12.
That's going to be interesting. When TCU had a run for a while where they kind of they made their name on playing defense in the Big 12, but now their secondary is one of the worst secondaries I've ever seen. They were awful.
They currently have a linebacker, according to The Athletic, from today's article, where they rattled off their mid-season awards. Their linebacker, Nick Benito, he is currently on the second team, right there with Jerome Ford at running back. But they also have a kicker.
Look, here's the thing, and I can't stay on here long because Kelly wants to go to sleep, and I don't want to keep her up for too long and get yelled at. Keep fighting the fight. Don't get beaten down by these narratives that are going to be thrown around. Don't let it happen, because this is an elite team. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't a team that was, is using 5-6 wide receivers and changing the way the game is played. This is a team that is lining up and kicking people's ass.
You mean we're not running Statue of Liberty offenses or anything?
Not a Statue of Liberty play. Central Florida University ran a Statue of Liberty package. A package of Statue of Liberty plays. They did that in fucking practice all week. To move the ball on this Cincinnati defense, the best thing we can do is incorporate the Statue of Liberty package of plays. Multiple plays.
I think we could all say, really, a lot of the stuff Cincinnati's doing on offense is fairly vanilla. It's line up and let's see what you got for our guys over here. And they don't
exactly.
No one's had anything.
Well, because here's the difference. Again, this goes back to what we've talked about this entire 10 minutes or how long I've been on here. They're not doing anything crazy. They're saying we have better players than you.
And we do.
Right? And they do. They're not saying that haphazardly. They're saying we have better players than you. What happened with Central Florida? They said, we're going to back off. If you go watch the majority of the first half of that game, they had 5, maybe 6 guys in the box. They said, we're not going to let you throw on us. We're not going to let you beat us deep. And Des said, bet.
Okay.
Here's my friend Jerome.
Built Ford tough.
And he's going to run down your fucking throat. You keep wanting to put 6 in the box? All right. Go back and watch some of those, not the splash plays. Don't go back and watch the big plays from Ford. Go back and watch what should have been if Central Florida played with 7 or 8 guys in the box, 3 and 4 yard runs. And he's picking his way slowly to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. Okay, let this block hit, let that block hit, let this block hit. All of a sudden, I'm 8 yards down the field. It's 2nd and 2. And that was what Central Florida gave them. And they have the ability that we've never seen a Cincinnati offense have to say, you want to shut down the boundary? We'll throw to the field. You want to shut down the field? We'll throw to the slot. You want to shut down the slot? We'll throw to the tight end. You want to shut down the tight end? We'll run it down your fucking throat.
Brian Kelly had it close.
Yeah, but even those
close.
teams still had some limitations.
Yeah, we didn't have the tight end that we have now.
Right.
I mean, there was definitely a depth difference as well.
And Pete was still really young back then. Like that was not, veteran Isaiah Pede, junior and senior year Isaiah Pede. So, the people think Travis Kelce played on those teams. Travis Kelce didn't play on those teams.
Was he suspended?
You had great wide receivers without question. And that's really where they made you pay was Pike, Benz, Gilliard, DJ Woods, Bones Barnett. Like they really made you pay at all the wide receiver spots. But even they didn't have that ability just at not one tight end, 2 tight ends, 2 NFL tight ends, an NFL running back, an NFL boundary wide receiver, a young, potentially NFL field wide receiver, a really, really good slot wide receiver in Michael Young, plus Trey Tucker behind him.
It's really not fair.
That's not even mentioning your NFL-ready quarterback.
Right. Like that's like you've got every chess piece.
I will say I saw something funny about the upcoming Navy game where someone said that we shouldn't play any of our DBs or cornerbacks and just spread linebackers out across the entire field.
Not wrong. You got to put Sauce and Kobe on the field. I'm interested, and we'll talk about this more Thursday night. I'm interested in how we see that defense evolve in Tressel's version of stopping the triple option. Because is it a true 4-4 with 4 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers? If you do that, you're only playing 3 defensive backs. You're going to have Sauce and Kobe on the field. Are you really taking one of Javon Hicks or Brian Cook off the field? Or do you go with the combination of, Beavers, DeBlanco, Huber, maybe Jaheim Thomas, and then the sniper or Dollar or whatever, however they're defining that spot now with Deshaun Pace and Ty Van Fossen. There's too many good players.
I was just saying, all the names you just listed right there are guys that anyone on any of these other teams in the top, in the country would say, please send that guy over here. We'll take him. We'll slot him in.
Right. Yep. So they've got 11 spots on defense. They've got 15 guys that they need to play. At least. We haven't even talked about just Arquan Bush gets a day off. Like there's no nickel. They're not running 3 wide receivers. So Arquan Bush gets a day off. Arquan Bush had a great game against UCF. Like, think about that's the part as a Cincinnati fan. And I've been doing this for 16 years. Now, for a while I wasn't as dialed into football because Tim Adams did football. I did basketball. I helped with football because football needs more than one body. And really at the time it was just Tim and I. Like that was, we were kind of handling everything as far as team coverage. So I was around, but I wasn't as connected as I am now. But I'm more than safe in saying there's never been a time when we could roll off all of these names.
It's wild.
And be like star, future star, future star, future star. We haven't talked about Curtis Brooks. You guys talked about him on the screen
when he blew that guy off it looked like a cartoon. It looked silly. how far back he pushed him. I went back and watched it again, and I'm like, it was ridiculous. The guy he had no chance, and that's what we have is we've got these guys that are at such a high caliber that it doesn't matter who lines up across from them. They're either going to be able to match it, and 99% of the time, they're several levels above the guy that they're lining up across from. And it showed on a play like that where they blow it up. Mikey Keene's running for his life. He tries to throw the ball out, and he serves up his running back.
If it wasn't for Brian Cook, it might have been a really well executed screen, because that's what you want as a screen, right? You want everybody coming to the quarterback on the right side, and then you throw it all the way across the field to the left side, and you are supposed to have blockers out in front, right?
Yeah.
To help him. Well, the center couldn't get out in front because Curtis Brooks kicked his ass.
Yeah.
And then
it was the thing of beauty.
If you just focus on Brian Cook, like, he stood in place, he strafed, he didn't get caught in the wash, and as soon as he saw that ball go in the air, like, you could tell he had it 1,000% identified, and he hit that guy, and he looked like a WWE table, the way he folded when Brian Cook hit him. Like, he looked like a table at a Buffalo Bills game.
Yeah. And what allows somebody like Brian Cook to sit out there and manage his responsibility is the fact that he knows that the guys over to his left are going to
everybody else is taken care of.
They've got theirs. He doesn't need to try and speed in on some kind of crazy blitz to blow up the quarterback, because he knows that that's going to be handled, so he can handle his little area. And his little area had a screen thrown to it, and it was really unfortunate for that young man that caught the pass.
I missed a little bit of this early, taking the dogs out and doing some family stuff. Did you guys talk about the other thing that I've maybe only seen like 5 times in my entire life in football, the history of football? Which is Brian Cook hitting a pulling guard so hard that it tackled the running back.
I didn't bring that up.
I saw that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I know Jeff had started to bring up some plays, but
they pulled both guards, right?
Yes.
And Cook strafed the one guard and hit the second guard so hard that the running back went upended, like launched into the air and fell down.
He tackled him with his own player.
Yeah,
he used him like a bowling ball. It was great. It all goes back to what we've been saying for the last 15 minutes, is that this is an elite team with elite players that can play not only at the next level but dominate at this level.
Yeah.
And yes, there are some other teams in college football that are good, and that's what people don't understand. Like, that's what just blows my mind. And somebody had tweeted about it a few weeks ago that like they feel like teams like UC's like are the fans for UC and the fans for like UCF back when they are like the most knowledgeable fans, because we don't turn on UC and then watch it and then turn it off, and that's the end of our college football day. Whereas like a lot of these other big Power 5, whatever, they get up, they watch their team, and then they go around and they talk about how great they are without having, we have to go watch all these other teams to be like, oh man, what pieces are going to move here? Is this team going to jump our team? Or are they going to go here? Because these other teams don't have to worry about it. Alabama loses to an unranked team and drops 4 spots.
Texas A&M sucked ass before they beat Alabama.
Yeah,
they were bad.
Texas was shitty and was still in the top 5 or 25 with 3 losses.
Like, you can watch some of these teams and just be like, and along the same talking points is like conference bias. You look at a team like Iowa who loses to an unranked team and they get jettisoned into the atmosphere somewhere.
You're out. Well, but that was obvious, right? We knew they weren't any good.
Right.
Arkansas beat Texas A&M 20-10. Do we need to go back and look what happened to Arkansas since then? Mississippi State beat Texas A&M 26-22. Texas A&M scored 22 points on Mississippi State and 41 on Alabama. They scored 10 on Texas A&M or Arkansas. Texas A&M scored 10 points. Fingers and thumbs, you can count them on like this. I don't have to use toes. They scored 10 points on Arkansas.
But nobody looks at that stuff. What they want to look at is they say, well, Alabama had to go and they had to play at Texas A&M. It was a road game. And, and you're like,
Mississippi State had to go play at Texas A&M.
Right.
They'll look at that if Cincinnati drops a game. All of a sudden, we'll be number 18 after one loss. Wondering what the hell just happened.
27.
It's wild to me that people can't just say we have a good team. Like, let's say, like, and honestly, like Georgia fans, a lot of Georgia fans have respect for the UC team because they've seen it.
They got the smoke.
They know.
And they won. And you know what?
But they know it took every fiber of their being to win that game.
And the most tired, lazy argument of all time is that those kids didn't. They don't come to. That's what I was told. I was told that kids don't go to Georgia to win the Peach Bowl. They go to Georgia because they want to win the national championship. And if it's not a national championship, they don't care.
But they don't win the national championship.
Right. They haven't won the national championship in like 45 years. Jeff, here's what you tell those people, right? You tell those people to go up to a kid that plays for Georgia and tell them they didn't try to win that game and see how fast you get your ass kicked.
Right.
That Georgia team was all in on winning that game. All in on winning that game.
Absolutely they were. And so were the UC kids, and it was a great game.
Because here's what would have happened if those kids didn't care about winning that game.
It would have been
when Jerome Ford broke that 79, 80-yard run, whatever it was, to start the second half, they'd have quit.
They'd have packed it in.
Because I've seen teams that didn't want to be in a bowl game, right? I've seen it.
Like the Belk Bowl?
I've seen, but I'm talking more about like this narrative on SEC teams or whatever, like, you know, these elite teams that get into a bowl game and they didn't want to be there. I've seen it happen. And what happens is they get to a point that they just decide, whatever. This season's over. We're out of here. That Georgia team did not decide that. That Georgia team decided, nah, man, not us. And they fought.
Bobby Carpenter covered it. Bobby Carpenter covered it on Twitter, like, I don't know, it was a week ago or so, and basically said the same thing. There's not an athlete worth their salt that goes into any competition and says, meh, I don't care to be here.
I mean, I'll disagree with that to an extent because we've seen some of those teams go into those bowl games and just not care. That Georgia team did not play like a team that didn't care. They played like a team that cared a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I don't know if you heard the argument that I was given before that, you know, obviously everyone wants to say Georgia was missing all of these guys going into the game, but they never want to talk about. So the guys that are playing now are the guys that have them at number one. So I say, well, you know, UC was missing some All-Americans.
Oh yeah, they don't want to talk about that.
But then the argument I was given was Georgia was missing 5-star guys. UC was only missing some 3-star guys.
That's the dumbest shit ever because Georgia replaced their 5-star guys with more 5-star guys.
Right. They had what, the top 2 or 3 recruiting class for like 3 years in a row now, something like that.
Yeah, they going into the Peach Bowl, in terms of the composite, they had the number 1 ranked roster in the country. That's how dominant they have been in recruiting over the past 5 years.
Like top 5 for like 4 out of 5 years.
So that's what I brought back as my argument, and I got no response from the individual that I was having a conversation with. So that was good. And
Cincinnati,
then today, Go ahead.
Tell them this: Cincinnati replaced James Wiggins, with Brian Cook,
right?
Who played his first 2 years at Howard.
Well, and so the thing
and he was the best defensive player on the field.
The thing I brought up today.
Besides that monster from Georgia that plays defensive tackle, that guy's a nightmare. Jesus Christ.
The guy that holds like 4 people at once. Yeah.
Did you see that they had a clip of him in the Kentucky game?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
he blew up the center and he went left and the play went right.
And he
just took the center and shoved him like, move, bitch, and went right and made the tackle. And it was like, that guy's like 340 pounds.
And moves like he's like 250 pounds. So not fair. But what I brought up from the Luke Fickell presser today was, and I said this, I couldn't hear the reporter like.
That's on me. When I do my videos, you can hear the questions from the reporters, and I wasn't there today. So hand up, that's on me. It's Kelly's fault.
I'm not blaming her.
Yikes.
She's asleep. We got away with that one.
Sneaky. But I think the reporter asked about having Evan Prater as a 4-star waiting in the wings, and Luke Fickell immediately shot it down and said, "We don't wait in the wings. If you wait, people pass you by." And that was on stage in January with a guy like Brian Cook, who hadn't been just waiting in the wings for his chance to get out there and shine. He was developing on what Luke kept referring to as the Tuesdays and Wednesdays. He was going at it on Tuesdays and Wednesdays to get himself to a level where when he was called into service on a Saturday night, he was ready to go.
So let me take you back to, I guess, it was like 2.5 years ago, into the season, and Cincinnati hits the transfer portal in December. And, people, you know how fans are, like they expect like splashes, big splashes. And Cincinnati adds 2 guys before the start of the winter semester. So they had 2 guys in December before they get to January. And those 2 guys were Darian Beavers and Brian Cook. And the fan base was like, what are we doing? We're adding a cast off from UConn and a scrub DB from Howard. Well, like, let's fast forward 2.5 years. And all of a sudden, those are 2 of the most impactful players on the number 2. I try to keep it as honest as possible. Georgia's the number 1 defense in the country. They are phenomenal at all 3 levels. They are, and especially because you have a guy at defensive tackle that's going to make $100 million in the NFL.
They also won a game without their offense scoring.
Right? Like, their defense is absurd. Cincinnati's the number 2 defense in the country. There is no defense in the country other than Georgia that is as good as this Cincinnati defense. Stop rate, yards per play, third down conversions. Like, when you add all of it together, offensive pass efficiency, like rush efficiency, pass efficiency, like, they are the number 2 defense in the country, and they're doing it without getting sacks, which is absurd.
I thought Majay got ripped off on his when they called him offsides.
Yeah, he did. He got his first.
He was not off, but when he got called offsides on the what play I'm talking about.
He's so fast at the snap that it got the officials.
Even the broadcasters who I made mention of, and then you replied back on Twitter, the announcers were all talking positively about UC, which is something that you usually hear, like all of the questions about, like, is
Dan
UC
Orlovsky
really
was great. That was great.
I mean, fantastic. He said, somebody asked him a question. He was like, well, it's not about who's the most popular team. It's about who's the best team. And the team I'm looking at right now is one of the best teams. But they made mention on that Maje one where he lowers his level to get explosive right before the snap. And that movement of him dropping down, coupled with the fact that he was so on top of the snap, getting across into the backfield, and they're like, well, he must have been offsides. throw this flag here.
You can't be that explosive off the snap. That must have been offsides.
Right. Well, meet Maje Sanders, please.
Right.
Because he is.
Right. It's I don't know. Like it's such a I'm in such a tough spot right now because I'm going to be, Colonel Jessup on that wall. You want me on that wall, you need me on that wall. I'm going to fight the good fight. But you have to find a way to not let it impact the fact that this is amazing to watch. Because there was never any indication in 135 years of UC football that they'd ever have this. This is somebody, it's one of those. This is really dumb, and I'm not. It's gonna sound stupid. This is one of those Mr. Beast videos where he shows up in an Uber and picks you up in a Lamborghini, and he's like, "This is your Lamborghini,"
right?
And you're like, "Oh shit." Mr. Beast just gave me a Lamborghini. We have
just like that.
We have a Lamborghini, and we don't know how to act, but
neither does the national media.
Fight. Right. That guy's not supposed to have a Lamborghini. I own a Lamborghini, and that guy's not supposed to have a Lamborghini.
Right. But I think it all goes back it's been built. And it is continuing to be built, and they're just, if you look at the level, I've never in my entire life seen after a UC game, let alone a UC after drubbing a not very good UCF team, seen that many recruits, and I realize they had a ton of recruits there, but see that many recruits put out just rave reviews of their time on the sideline at UC, and obviously that spills over to Wes Miller and bringing his recruits up there to see some of these games, right? So
absolutely,
it just builds on each other.
I've talked to Wes about it a couple times, and he is just over the moon about being able to sell that, about being able to say this is what we got here, and if you win they're winning, then you get this on the basketball side, because that's what it's all about for Wes, right? That's what you use Absolutely. That for, is to say, this is how crazy this town will get.
It's a hungry fan base.
Right. Yeah. The other thing going for Wes though is he can bring up videos of years gone by and say,
we've done this before.
This basketball team has been at the level that the football team is at right now. And this is what, this city doesn't just throw it behind football and that's it. But they've already done it with basketball. They love basketball and they're yearning to have that back. So you get on the court and we do the kinds of things they're doing, you're going to get that back again.
He targeted 2 high school kids and got them both in 2022. Well, 3 with Sage. But, Sage was a little earlier in the process. He didn't go through the football game stuff.
Right.
He got lucky a Hawaiian moved to Hamilton.
Yeah.
He
but
said, bring that awesome food truck and everyone will buy everything that you sell. Because that food truck is amazing.
I told you guys.
And then I just saw that they have a burger now that they're...
Yeah, it's a burger. I've never seen a burger dipped in teriyaki sauce.
I want it though.
With pulled pork on top. Okay.
Is there pineapple involved, right?
I'm sure. There is. There's always pineapple involved. It's Hawaiian.
There should be.
But,
that giant Kahlua bowl that I had was. It fed me and my wife.
Is it too early? Is it too early to talk about retiring Desmond Ridder's number?
Yes.
I don't like. Technically, yes, but for what he's done from the minute he walked on the field at the Rose Bowl to now, no quarterback's ever had a better career at the University of Cincinnati. None.
That's true.
You can give me Greg Cook, you can give me Gino Guidugli, you can give me Tony Pike. From the minute, like, think how long ago that was when he walked on the field on the third series of the game in the Rose Bowl, led that team to victory, to where this program is at now. There is no more transformative player in the history of Cincinnati football than Desmond Ridder. And he's up there in the pantheon of all of the greats in this city, period, for what he's done over the past 4 years. Period. Look at that burger. Look at that. Teriyaki burger, pulled pork. Oh.
They don't have pineapple on it.
I thought that was pineapple.
Well, I'm going to have to talk to him and get like a pineapple salsa
like a grilled
or something.
Pineapple slice on there?
Yeah.
I want a pineapple on there.
Yeah, I definitely want a slice of pineapple on there.
I know a guy or two connected with that food truck that we can get a grilled pineapple slice on there.
Nice.
Maybe between the teriyaki burger and the pork, there's a slice of grilled pineapple.
Oh,
like, so you get it in the middle.
A little sweet with that teriyaki.
Yeah,
that's top tier cuisine.
But
right
I think going back to the Des conversation, he's going to be mentioned with Kenyon Martin as the best players that were ever here in the history of Cincinnati sports.
Well, because they did similar things, right? Mm-hmm. Kenyon took this basketball program back to a level like, if we talk about 92 was unexpected. Like, that team wasn't supposed to make the run that it made. But they did, and they followed it up in 93, which that's actually what gives them like that second tier, that not only did they make the Final Four, but then they backed it up with an Elite Eight, and they had, just barely lost to North Carolina to go into their second Final Four in 2 years. Like, that makes them amazing.
Well, similar situation with the Peach Bowl last year.
Right. Des got him into a New Year's Six Bowl.
Come what may this year.
And if he finishes the job, got to finish a job. That's what it's all about. If he finishes the job and gets them into either a New Year's Six or gets them in, how about this stood out to me today. I had to do it from home, but I watched the press conference today, and Des said championships aren't won in week 1 and week 6.
Yeah.
Championships are won in week 13 and week 15. He said it. He said it.
Well,
he said it.
That's the same Desmond Ridder who, as everyone's talking about him being a Heisman candidate, doesn't give a shit that he has no stats last week, while Jerome Ford runs all over UCF, and he's happy that it made his job easier. Because that's what Desmond Ridder
gave him. That's what the defense gave him. They put 5 guys in the box, and Des said, "You guys are idiots." Here you go, Rome.
Right.
But that's the first time we've really heard anyone in this program speak about week 15. And the only way you get to week 15 is to play for the title.
He also mentioned that he was, I guess after the game, he was up with the coaches and he said, how's it feel to be number 2? And they all, kind of, no different. What he said, good. That's where we want to be at. We can all be there too. It doesn't mean anything.
He said he checked with the coaches and asked the coaches, what's it mean to you guys? And the coaches were like doesn't mean shit. And he was like, that's what I want to hear.
All right. Yeah, it's like and Fickle touched on it too, that there's leadership at every level. From the defense, the offense, to the special teams, that there are leaders everywhere. And that's what you need. That's what you've got to build to have the success to be there in week 15.
You know what's beautiful I've noticed over these 30 minutes or so when I was only supposed to do 15 or 20, but she's sleeping and I haven't woke her up yet, so I'm not gonna rock the boat.
Thank you. It's a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Points that Jeff has made, points that Aaron has made, points that Ed has made, everybody else has smiled because it's like, yeah, like this is real. This is actually happening. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't bullshit. This is legit. Like, this team is one of the best teams in the country, and the country might not know it yet. They might, like, there's people that realize it. There's people that don't, but this is one of the best teams in the country.
Keep winning by 20 plus.
But
Yep.
yes, like, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the realization of, like, UC football has entered itself into that conversation. It has entered itself into that picture. Yeah, they forced themselves into that picture to say, nah, man, this isn't flash in the pan. We got elite dudes. Like, we got guys all over the field that are better than your guys. And that's how you do it. That's how you do it. It isn't, we might, and 09 did this towards the back end of that season because, like, the defense faltered where they were winning games 45-43. And as it stands, this team, every game has been double digits. Every game has been comfortable. Like, Indiana, I wouldn't call comfortable, but, like, for the most part, this team is taking everybody and saying, we're better than you. We have better guys. We have a better game plan. We have better execution. We have a better understanding of what you're trying to take away and what we're going to exploit. And it's wild because that's only something that we've ever seen with UC basketball, right? We saw that with UC basketball at the peak of the Huggins era. We saw it a lot with Mick, even though there still was kind of that one flaw of, like, if you got into a shootout, were you going to be able to win the shootout? Like, if a game got into the upper 70s and lower 80s, were you going to, like, that was the one knock on Mick is if a game got to that point, were you going to be able to like really
break out of the rock fight?
Yeah, really, like, embrace that type of game when it presented itself. What we're seeing from this UC team is it doesn't matter. You want to run, they're going to shut you down. You want to throw, they're going to shut you down.
It's hard to throw when you can only throw to half the field, and even that is dangerous.
Well, you've got another NFL guy on the other side, and that's not even talking about the fact that I think Arquan Bush is an NFL guy who's has been miscast as a slot corner, even though he's not a slot corner. He's an outside corner. He just has Kobe and Sauce, so he can't play outside corner right now. Like, when you look at what slot corners normally look like, that's not Arquan Bush. Arquan Bush is an NFL outside corner. He just hasn't had the chance to play the role of NFL outside corner except for the Peach Bowl, where he was pretty good outside of George Pickens catching like 3 deep balls, like, at his fingertips over the top of the defense because he didn't have safety help that he probably should have had. Like,
all right, Chad.
Well,
you've been here. I was going to say, you've been here for 45 minutes. If we don't literally push you out of here, Jeff will continue to just pepper you with questions until you're here for another half hour. So get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for the surprise visit.
I needed to rant because the Galloway thing got me pissed off. And, sometimes you guys are going to have to deal with this on Tuesday where I don't have another outlet to rant somewhere. So I have to come here and do it. I stayed away last week. And I didn't see Vannini. How'd Vannini go? I love Chris.
We did touch on the Joey Galloway thing with Vannini, and we definitely we discussed his Cincinnati cuisine experience. We discussed Nipper. We discussed because he doesn't stay in the press box the whole time when he's doing a stadium visit, which was interesting.
No, he bounces around. Yeah,
he wanders. Yeah, but no, he was good. He was good. And then we talked wrestling, and Ed was in his wheelhouse. So.
He's a huge wrestling guy. Like, they have Like
Yep,
he runs the podcast on The Athletic for wrestling. So
we did our homework.
I'm glad you guys got all that in. Chris is a good dude. So
yeah.
All right, go talk some Bengals and don't talk Reds. Nobody wants to be depressed.
There's
about
nothing
the Reds.
There's no Reds talk right now.
What, we're talking about
All
the
right.
Reds? We'll talk about some UC baseball.
There you
See
go.
that?
You son of a bitch.
What did you say, Ed?
I said we'll talk some UC baseball.
Oh. We did get some UC basketball in there, so
well, we did, and I was going to ask you guys because we saw that the season launches in 21 days, so we got to see Melvin Levitt and we got to see James White. Melvin was posting pictures in social media of the two of them together to just embrace the 21 days, as that was both of their numbers. But we've talked about it on BBP. Who do you want to be the starting five in 21 days when this all? I'm going to keep asking you as we evolve ever closer. But they are talking about Victor. I mean, if you didn't listen to the BBP last night, Victor locked in. That's what I want to call him. But he's apparently looking like the number 23 best of all UC history. Well, since they've been recording it on 24/7. The 23rd best recruit of UC's history on 24/7. But who do you want to see? My top five, and feel free to argue if you want. I have Ado at the 5.
Yep.
Davenport at the 4. Newman at the 3. DeJulius at the 2. And Mikey at the 1. Not to be confused with Micah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. There's so many new players in this team that it's like, and I think you guys touched on it last night. People upset about our rankings or whatever. We don't know what this team looks like. We've never seen. Okay, national media has seen Coach Wes Miller coach, but we have never seen Coach Wes Miller coach. There are players from his old school. There's players from the draft portal.
From last year.
Mason, we know Mikey, we know Rob Banks. Well, we don't really know Rob Banks, but we know Davenport, we know Micah Adams Woods. These other guys,
but we don't know them in Wes Miller's scheme.
Well, that's true as well. We don't know them in that scheme.
I was going to say, we touched on it a couple of weeks ago when Chad came on that, they're at basketball 101.
Yeah.
They have to, they're going through not only implementing the scheme, but seeing where everybody that they've brought in, that they've kind of mixed together, is going to fit with each other. I think probably putting together any starting 5 is really a crapshoot, and I don't see anything wrong with the 5 that you put together. I like Mikey. I think Mikey is just going to explode this year. We saw flashes of it last year with his speed and ability to handle the ball without turning it over a whole lot. He's just
flying behind them.
Ed loves his luscious mane, apparently. But I just and who was it last week? Was Justin Williams brought up Abdul Ado? Like, I guess he's impressing. So I'm excited to see, maybe get some feedback from some of these. I guess Indiana backed out of whatever super secret meeting they were going to have,
which wasn't secret after Woodson announced it,
and then
makes it all the more weird. But
that they backed out of it, and then I guess they went up to Detroit and played a little deal up there. They're going to. I don't know. So I'm interested to kind of get a little more reports. Obviously, I haven't been to any practices.
Yeah, you've seen them practice, at the open gym or whatever, so you got a little bit of a more insight. I like your starting 5. I really do. I think it's a solid starting 5. I think it's probably what we're going to see coming out, in 22, 21 days. But it's like I said before, it's just people are upset about the rankings and everything, but we don't know yet. We don't know. we felt this 2 years ago with that guy who won't be named. But I'm excited. I'm excited as hell about it.
Well, there was one game that was played this weekend in Detroit, as we're talking about Detroit, and that was the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions. And they stomped the Lions out.
And is that something? Let me ask you this question, because I brought this up to some people. Bengals teams of old that we thought, this is a good team, right? This is a team that's maybe going places, right? They would go and they would play a team like the Lions, and what would happen? We'd be biting our nails. Exactly. We'd be biting our nails to the end, and we'd win by certainly not a walk-off field goal for most of the times, but a touchdown, whatever. There would be something that would happen at the end of the game. We'd pull it off by the skin of our teeth. This Bengals team went in. It's a little slow to start, but then imposed their will across the remainder of the game and did what they were supposed to do, which was beat an inferior team. This is still a Bengals team that I feel is rebuilding and is putting pieces together, but is coming together much quicker than I expected they would, and is kind of turning some heads across the country and across the league as far as being a good football team, and one that a lot of these other teams don't want to see on Sunday.
I would agree.
Well,
I would agree. I was worried. I think somebody. No, he asked us about the UCF game, but you're right, 100%. Like, this is one of those teams that was supposed to be one of those games that you're supposed to win, and then normally we'd come out and shit the bed with it. And we said the same thing about the Thursday night game against the Jaguars, right? Well, at least I did. That I was afraid. We're supposed to beat the Jaguars, but it's a Thursday night primetime game, and who knows what's going to happen. And we came out and pulled that one off too. I'm trying. So I found myself, and I thought this is where you're going with this one, Jeff. I found myself today saying, when does the bottom fall out on this team? Like, when do we say, oh, there's the Bengals that we know? And, looking at the schedule, I'm not sure that's coming up anytime soon.
I mean, I think we kind of saw that fall out against the Bears, right? Like, they did not play well against the Bears. They didn't. And then when they decided to play well, they ran out of time. Right? I mean, it was just a bad game. It was just a bad game.
Well, this defense looks way different than they looked against Chicago as well. Logan Wilson's coming into his own.
Logan Wilson is so good.
Our safeties are playing like arguably the best safety tandem in the league between Von Bell and what's the best safety we have? The guy, best safety in the league. I can't remember his name right now.
Think about it.
Think about it, Aaron. You can do this.
There's been a lot happening tonight, and I'm also simultaneously searching for current NBA players that were Bearcats over here. But Jeff didn't know either. That's why he wanted me to think about it.
I know.
Talk about Bates?
Yes, Jesse Bates.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought so. All right. Yeah. I was thinking Bates the whole time. I was thinking through.
When Aaron was listening it off, it was in my head, and then he went blank, and I looked at him, and I was like, "Oh no!" I also just went blank, and so then I wanted Aaron to fix
but yeah,
it.
No, Bates and Bell have been playing as arguably the best safety tandem in the league. The linebackers finally are starting to look like linebackers between Akeem. What is it? Akeem Davis. Is it Akeem Davis or Akeem Gaithers?
I can't.
You're really messing with me tonight, Aaron.
That's fine.
You're throwing so many names all in one hat.
But I mean, and Pratt and Logan Wilson, they're looking good. The defensive line's looking great between Reeder and Trey Hendrickson is looking fantastic.
Okay, can we talk about Hendrickson absolutely dominating Sewell?
Well, that was the next point that I was going to make. Is it time to put to rest the Sewell over Chase? Like, I don't think you make that argument anymore.
And here's the thing: is Sewell may eventually become a very, very good lineman. He settled in towards the end of the game, and I know like PFF graded him out as like their best offensive player, like lineman during that game. Some nonsense, but I thought that right. PFF sometimes
he got destroyed early on.
Trey Hendrickson bullied him on seemingly every down. Like there was a highlight I would look, and there would be Sewell with his arms up like this, and Hendrickson was already by him.
So he looked great when the game was out of hand. That's fantastic.
Right.
Well done.
But apparently that counts into your PFF grade. I don't know.
Sure. Okay.
Like
okay.
He and then the really funny tired joke that everybody made all day long was Jamar Chase is a better blocker than Sewell after Jamar Chase, and I can't wait
made the lead
for
block to get Mixon into the end zone.
And
Absolutely.
I can't wait for the Jamar Chase mic'd up to get released that the Bengals did, even though they released like some little clips like after that play when he was like he's like sitting on the bench and he was like, I was like a tight end out there. Did you see that? I was like a tight end out there. And Mixon was like, man, Mixon was like, man, that's his touchdown, man. That's his touch, because I don't know who the defensive back was because I'm not a Lions fan, but he took him to the woodshed. He shoved him down and then pushed his head back down on the ground so that Mixon could complete his hurdle into the end zone. I showed my son that clip and I said, when they line you up out there, that's what you're supposed to do.
Here's the play. Go ahead and play it, Ed.
Trey Flowers is out leveraged and he
turn off the audio.
There it is. There's that.
And then boom.
Right on 25.
I mean, it was a fantastic block. I mean, it's what was needed there, and it goes to show you that Chase isn't just somebody that just learned how to catch a football.
It was fantastic, and again, like I said, I think it's time to finally put that completely to rest. If it wasn't already, with him being arguably I don't even know that it's arguable at this point. He's the rookie of the year. I don't think there's anyone close to him that is rookie of the year. You can get the there you
go. I didn't know so I forgot to hit stop sharing.
But yeah, he's the rookie of the year, and there's really no contest. The Bengals are sitting right now at 4-2, and they're.
Can we talk about somebody else real quick that had quite the game?
Go on.
Chris Evans.
Oh, you mean Captain America?
Is he? I saw some talk on Twitter that he should be solidified as RB2.
I think that's well. Here's the thing: is P-Run's not been bad, but I think that Chris Evans is literally, even in his interviews, emulating Gio Bernard. He said he wants to be the blocker that Gio was. He has looked at that part of Gio's game. He's watched the film, and he picked his brain while Gio was still here after he got drafted in that regard. So he understands that you have to be able to put up that block when you are, on the field in that position. So yeah, he's setting himself up to be moving into that Gio Bernard role. Keep catching the ball, dude. I mean, if you got the hands that Gio has, then and you can block the way that Gio was blocking, and people are already talking about he had some fantastic blocks in that game. That's your spot to lose then. And while P-Ryan's not been bad when P-Ryan's been in, but P-Ryan's not got he's not a young spring chicken, if you will. I mean, he's got some mileage on him, and I don't know. I think this is Chris Evans' spot to lose at RB2.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't have. I like that. I mean, there's always that crazy little stat that pops up, and obviously it was college, but Samaje Perine did have the college record for he's not a bad running back, and it's not a bad running back room.
It's not a knock on him. It's just
no. And some of the stuff that I saw on Twitter was clearly written as a knock on P. Ryan, which is just absolutely absurd.
He's filled in fantastic with Mixon being out.
Sure.
And when you've got a guy out, I mean, we've seen it in Minnesota. We've seen it in Baltimore. We've seen it in several places around the NFL this year where if a guy goes down, who you got? And you need to make sure that you have somebody who's capable of stepping in. And much like we talked about earlier this podcast, with Cincinnati having guys not waiting in the wings, but ready to step into the role, I think you have a guy like that in Samaje Perine who can step into the role. No, he's not going to be Joe Mixon. He's not advertised as Joe Mixon, but he's capable of handling the role. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't feel nearly as comfortable in games going in with Samaje Perine, but I'm also not thinking that we're going to fall on our face and wondering, scrambling, where are we going to get a running back from if Mixon goes down?
So I guess we're all past the there was quite a stir of sadness when they kind of let Gio go. But
Evans looks good.
Kind of makes sense at this point. And the Bengals do look good, and I'm excited to see the mic'd up from Jamar Chase. And there's great chemistry there. Obviously, they built it beforehand and are continuing on it.
I'm excited to see the game. I'm excited to see the game on Sunday. Oh. Sunday they take on the first place Ravens. We're one game behind them in the standings right now. The Ravens sit in an unbelievable fashion. Somehow they only have one loss, sitting at 5-1. The Bengals are right now at 4-2, and this game is for first place. And I think that both teams are going to bring their A game. And I don't like that the national media is running with Logan Wilson and not getting the whole. They're not even getting the whole quote where
they didn't add the most key word.
No, they're trying to run with the narrative.
Whoever that I don't know who Dove or whoever that person was, he's verified, so maybe he's got some following, which is a shame that he has a following and he wants to try. And then he just like tweeted the same like response to everybody that tried to call him out on it. And it's like, come on, like don't try and put a storyline where there's not a storyline. It was very clearly a compliment. And Logan Wilson even responded to the tweet and said, like, you're out of your mind. Like, right. Yeah, I said he is a running back that also plays quarterback because he can do both at a high level, and that's what makes him dynamic and difficult to cover.
Even on Stephen A's show today, they were talking about it. Like, they had a whole segment on it where it was Logan Wilson says that he's the best running back in the NFL. And that was where they left it. And that was where the argument was. And it was like, that's not even what he said. Like, I mean, it was what he said, but that wasn't the whole quote. Like, you're taking it out of connotation. I don't know. I don't like when people run with some bullshit quotes as their headline.
But that's what it comes back to is they would never try to set somebody up from the Steelers with a quote like that, or somebody from the Patriots or Tom Brady, maybe the Patriots now because they don't have Tom Brady, but you get what I'm saying. The darlings of the NFL, they would not try. The Bengals are still looked upon as,
redheaded stepchildren.
Right. And it's ridiculous. And, I think that they are playing a very good football at this point. Much better than I thought that they would be able to play at this point of the season. I only had them pegged at about 8 or 9 wins at the very most, and I think that they might be able to eclipse that. I really do.
Regardless of the outcome against the Ravens, following that game, you play the Jets at New York. Following that game, the Browns right now, I think, have about half their roster on some type of injury watch.
Baker Mayfield has one arm.
So they're very injured. I think they, honest to God, have like 18 players on the injury list right now. And we play them on November 7th after the Jets game. And then we have the Raiders, who are still figuring things out in a post-John Gruden era without getting into any of that. And then we take on the Steelers again before we face the Chargers. So of those games, there's really only 2 games I'm thoroughly concerned about. And the only reason the Browns aren't a third team there that I'm thoroughly concerned about is because of the injuries. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But the Bengals are kind of sitting in a driver's seat right now in the AFC North, and maybe in the passenger seat. We'll say in the passenger seat until they overtake the Ravens.
They're not in the sidecar anymore. I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're not in the trailer hitched to the back of the truck,
right,
or anything like that. So, kudos to a Bengals team that's still trying to figure things out, because I don't think that we've seen the best of what their offense can produce, as we've talked at length about, and I don't necessarily want to get into that again tonight, as we were already over 2 hours. So.
We were approaching it. I know Aaron had a bum of the week that he wanted to touch on.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on now.
I'm sorry. We're approaching 2 hours. We're not quite at 2 hours, but yes.
Ed, you've already had your AEW time.
Nope. That's not. Nope. I took notes.
All right. You better talk fast, because we're going to give you. This is something that this is something that the Dan Le Batard show does with the girl who talks FS1 racing. They give her 60 seconds to try and rapid talk about as much as she can. So we'll give you 60 seconds to talk about as much as you can.
I get a little bit more than 60 seconds?
No, you get 60 seconds.
I'm filibustering you right now to get your thoughts together, get your notes together.
I have my notes right here.
Hang on. I'm getting my timer out. I'm allowing you to try and collect yourself while I kind of filibuster here. But we are going to give you 60 seconds.
Real quick, before you start the timer, I watched the AEW Rampage from Friday night while I was in Chattanooga, and I just wrote down some notes about the 3 matches. I wrote down the 3 matches, who won, and some thoughts that went through my head. These aren't thoughts that you guys need to answer. These are thoughts that you guys should just think about after you listen to the podcast. Let me know.
We talked about it earlier. We teased it earlier, so we're going to give Ed his 60 seconds of AEW talk, and I think we should continue the segment forward, where we just give him 60 seconds to spew as much out as he can, because I think this is fantastic. But your time starts now.
Okay, so CM Punk started the night out by defeating Matt Sydal and extending his undefeated streak to 4-0 in AEW. Some thoughts I had during the match. Where are the signs from the fans? What happened to those? Second, why such a large Pepsi logo on CM Punk's arm? Don't understand that. Next match was Ruby Soho defeats the Bunny. Why is there a person named the Bunny? But thoughts I had. These people will never be Luna Vachon. Where's Sonny and Sable at these days? Got no clue. Why does Ruby kind of look like Rihanna? That's a good question I had. And Soho got attacked at the end, which I thought was pretty shitty. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, the next match was like some guys, some groups, okay? The Inner Circle versus America's Top Team. Thoughts I had. Oh, by the way, America's Top Team won. Why does the Inner Circle not come out to Bad Boys? Think about that one. I thought that Chris Jericho had a podcast now. This Sumney kid, he is pretty good.
And time!
I thought she was an MEA. Hold on, just give me one more. Paige Van Zandt.
No. Ed is muted. He does not get to go over his 60 seconds. Aaron gave him 60.
No,
that's it.
Paige Van Zandt. I thought she was an MMA fighter. Checks the internet. Yes, she is.
All right, Ed. So going forward, just so you know, that this is how we're gonna do this segment every time. That was my. I think that
was a lot of fun. Actually, I enjoyed it.
That was fantastic. Whatever your next thought is, save it for next week. You'll have 60 more seconds to dump as much AEW on us as you can. Holy shit, that was fantastic.
All right. We have expanded past Cincinnati sports.
Notes.
Play me the bum of the week, please.
Oh, I didn't get that ready. Can you filibuster for that too?
Of course I can filibuster. We already did talk about Joey Galloway, so I'm not going to bring that up as my bum.
Maybe you can give the social media credentials.
For what?
Us.
You can find us on Twitter at PTP Podcast Cincy. You can find me at AC Smith 37, Ed at 2 Chins with a Z, Cincy with an I for some reason unbeknownst to me. Jeff went the same route with at Cincy with an I, fan 500. It's like they haven't lived here all their lives. It's just absolutely wild. But I'm still like tears on my face right now that I haven't actually been able to wipe because of how funny that whole segment was.
That was fantastic. Ed said, where did all the signs go?
He said, why is that Pepsi logo so big on his arm?
I love the. I would love to live inside Ed's head. I don't know, just briefly hear about all the things. Like, I just imagine Ed's like driving down the road and he sees things and like, oh.
I want that segment to be a staple heretofore.
Why don't we just call it Ed? We'll just call it Ed's 60 seconds. Ed, you get 60 seconds to talk about whatever you want.
Jeez.
Hopefully it's wrestling more because that was funny.
Or whatever else.
I got it.
All right.
Bum of the week.
Like a damn bum, you know that? Bum. A bum. You are a bum. You're a bum. And that's all you'll ever be. A bum.
Well, that hurts, man.
All right. So, like I said, Joey Galloway could have been the bum of the week, but we brought it up several times throughout the show for guest reasons, which made perfect sense. So the next bum of the week has to be the Philadelphia 76ers are dealing with some absolutely crazy things right now. And the team hates him. It doesn't make sense what he's trying to do.
Gary?
No, not Gary Clark. I don't
Good.
I don't know that there's any current Bearcats in the NBA right now. But Ben Simmons shows up to practice in sweatpants with his cell phone in his pocket, and he's asked to do a defensive exercise. He refuses, and this is after he's pretty much not reported to the team up until today. Today was his first practice back. So he's asked to go do a defensive exercise, cell phone in pocket, wearing sweatpants on the court, refuses, and the coach, Doc Rivers, has to ask him to leave. He's being suspended for a game. He's already asked for a trade, so he doesn't even want to be there. And because the team is very upset because of his playoff performance, he can't hit a three to save his life. As a point guard, that's not a good thing. But I don't know if you guys know anything about any of the situation going on, but to go from I don't want to be here, final report at the end of camp as the season starts tonight, hence Ed wearing all of his NBA garb at the same time, including a Gary Clark jersey. But
not all of it. I also have a Bulls hat and a Pacers hat.
So what would you guys do if you supported a team where a guy asked for a trade, they finally talk him into coming back, he comes back, then just refuses to participate in practice, is wearing, instead of shorts, like basketball shorts for practice, he's wearing sweatpants, cell phone in pocket. They ask him to leave. And then Joel Embiid, arguably the leader of the team, says, I have no respect for that man. I don't really care what they do with him at this point. He has no trade value, even though he's being paid roughly $30 million a year. What do you do in a situation like this?
What you do is you wait for a former assistant to become the head coach on a team wherein you want some picks from them. Then you send him there.
Oh, much like the Bengals did with Carson Palmer. Is that what you're referencing? I think that's what you're referencing.
I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Like when a grown man doesn't want to be somewhere to play a sport to make millions of dollars at whatever team he's on, like I've got nothing for you.
Well, and there's so much player empowerment now that there wasn't when we were kids growing up watching the sport because of how much money they make. Truthfully, like when a star doesn't want to be somewhere and he wants to be just kind of an asshole to the organization because he doesn't want to be there because you've made him feel like shit. I don't know what you do. Like they benched the starter in the middle of the playoffs, a starter who helped get you to the playoffs, mind you, and just doesn't want to be there anymore. So because you benched him in the most trying time of the season. So I don't know. Pretty wild. But that's my bum of the week because the fuck do you do with that?
I don't think there's anything you can do with that, to be honest with you.
There's no
repercussions. There's nothing you can do outside of.
They suspended him for a game.
Okay, so you suspend.
Conduct detrimental to the team. But
okay, right. Does he get paid for that? Like, is he still getting paid?
I don't think you get paid for that.
So he loses a little paycheck there. I mean, maybe going after the pockets is about all you can do. But then at some point, I'm sure the union steps in and says, you can't just keep doing that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how their stuff works, but
it'll be pretty interesting to see how that plays out. I'm just really happy that it's happening in Philadelphia because they're not a team that I really like.
Well, it couldn't happen here because we don't have an NBA team. So.
There is that. But it's just nice to see like Cincinnati, the Bengals aren't the most dysfunctional team at this point in time in all of sports as they've been recognized.
Bengals aren't. I mean, if you would talk about, you can say all of sports, but even within the NFL, the Bengals aren't the most dysfunctional team. There's plenty of other ones.
Would you say the most dysfunctional team in the city of Cincinnati right now is probably FC Cincinnati?
100%. There's no other.
Do they even have a team still? Does FC even have a team?
There's still a stadium down there. Unless TQL's fired them.
No, they lost to Orlando on Saturday at TQL.
Hey, we just brought back FC Cincinnati to the podcast. It's over.
All right,
shut it down.
That's how we leave. So this was another episode of Pardon the Punctuation. Thanks for sticking around with us for 2 hours. If you did, I am Aaron Smith, best producer.
Over there.
Ed is over here. And Jeff Howell. He just really enjoyed his time with Chad Brendel tonight. Chad Brendel, surprise guest. And Chris Vannini did his thing. We appreciate you both. But I'm Aaron Smith. And again, this was Pardon the Punctuation. We'll see you.
Bye.
Ba-dum-bum.